I welcome everybody. Thank you for taking the time. I know this is summertime, so there's a lot of people on vacation. I would imagine there's going to be quite a few people that listen to the recording as opposed to are attending. So I'm going to be presenting this with the idea of both people that are here as well as the people that are going to be watching this on the recording. Again, what we're going to be talking about is the sharing with marketplaces and the consistent sharing. Um, we've been doing webinars. This is actually the second webinar we've done this year. And so enjoy doing the webinars with the users group. It's great, but more importantly, be looking forward to seeing you guys in Dallas in a couple, 3 weeks. What do I plan on trying to cover today? This is an agenda, and like Cheryl said, if you have questions, this is meant for you. This isn't meant for us. This is meant for you. So if you have questions, I've asked Cheryl if she'd be kind enough to interrupt me if some questions come up during this. So if I'm going over something too fast, which, oh, by the way, I've been told I talk way too fast on these things and get through things way too early. I'm going to try to make sure that I don't talk as fast. And if I have things that we need to go into more detail on, we can do that. But I'm going to go over, give an introduction, who is Gray Wolf, where do we come from, how we come around, and then I want to get into what is a marketplace. And I know that's a really kind of insulting statement as to why do I have to define a marketplace? There's a reason for wanting to do that, so bear with me on that a little bit. Then go through a technological overview of how we look at what's happening with the concept of a marketplace, do some demonstrations, talk a little bit about pricing, and then if you notice I say wrap up, I don't say wrap up with questions because hopefully we're going to have some questions as they go through, but if we need to, we can wait till the end for some of those questions as well. One of the things that we try to do as Gray Wolf is we try to be as transparent as possible. So I'm going to actually show you real quick our website. And if you look at our website, we are extremely open with a lot of things. So who are we? We focus primarily on PIM and EDI, which is what we're going to be talking about today. But if you go to places like the About Us, you'll see our timeline, and you'll see in here that Cheryl and I have known each other for over a decade now, and that's really sad when I think about how much gray hair I have. But we've known each other for a long time, and that's because we've been in business for over 30 years. We have focused on the wholesale distribution industry. We had started out in the Infor arena. In fact, I worked there. In fact, even if you go further back, my dad was an auto parts distributor. So I've been involved in the distribution industry for a very long time. Getting involved in the P21 world has been pretty easy for us to do. But what you can do is go to our website, find out more about who we are, some of the things that we've done. But realistically, what I want you to walk away from is what we do is we focus on guys like you. Now, we may be doing things that are more technological, more broad brushed, but we do understand the concept of what Prophet 21 does. And you're going to see when I get to the poll, I'm going to ask you some questions so I can understand who you are as well. For me personally, I am a certified management accountant. I have been doing things with the other designations you see on there. I've got way too many letters behind my name. But more importantly, what I try to do is try to bring together both the technology with the business side. So if you're a person that's a technology type of a focus, let's go and talk about that. I've done all that stuff, the networking and the SQL Server, and I've actually been working with SQL Server since version 4.2, right after Sybase was bought by Microsoft on it. I've also got the business side, so we can talk about the accounting things and where does this come into play. So hopefully you can see that we're trying to bring to the table not just the technology, not just the software, but the implementation of the software. So that being said, I'd like to know a little bit about you. If Cheryl, if you would be kind enough, we've got 3 questions for you. It's more just demographic information. So if you can help me out by giving some information of who you are, that would really be nice of you to do that for me, please. So the first one, are you on-prem or are you cloud? And what I mean by on-prem, that includes, it's where you own the license. And there's a reason for this question as you're asking it or answering it for me, is because we've written a set of APIs. If you are on-prem, that gives us a lot more control. If you want to if you've got some Dynachange things that you've made, we can work with that. If you're in the cloud edition, That limits us a little bit, and we are now handcuffed by what Epicor does with the middleware server and what they do in those pieces. So she's sharing it. Okay, we do have some people that are on some growth into that. Go ahead, Cheryl, if you would, with the next question. We are seeing growth in that arena. So it's not surprising. We have a lot more of the integration with the concept of the P21 on-prem, mostly because it's been around longer, but we are seeing more in that arena. Are you using a marketplace? Pretty straightforward, unless you're not doing things necessarily with marketplaces. You may not even know you're not doing it with it. And I'm going to get into the definition of it, so I'm not going to go into that now. I want to base it off of what you think a marketplace is. Okay, so you are using marketplaces. That's good to know. Let's go to the last question, if we could, please, then, Cheryl, because the ones that answered yes, this is for you. So which ones are you using? And I'm going to break it out into 3 types. One is going to be a retail type of e-commerce marketplace. One is going to be a platform, and I'm going to get into more details on, but if you're using, say, Shopify or BigCommerce or Adobe Commerce, Adobe Commerce is kind of crossing over the line a little bit. So if you're using that, I wouldn't necessarily call that a marketplace, but we'll go into that more in detail. Or are you using some of the private stuff? And I'm going to guess the majority of you are not using the ones that's going to be the last one. There might be a few of you using it, and I kind of figured that'd be the answer. So perfect, that's what I'm looking for. You are exactly what I expected. Thank you, Cheryl, for that. I expected you to have those kind of answers. So let's go through and make sure we're all on the same page of what a marketplace is. And maybe you might even change your answers on some of this. Definition, I got this from dictionary.com. What's a marketplace? And obviously it's not the first one, but it's basically business, trade, economics. Well, okay, that doesn't help us too much. So the basic definition of a marketplace really doesn't help us in what we're talking about. So let's go to the next maybe. All right, what marketplaces have been around for a long time? Is the marketplace I'm talking about kind of like with this back in the 1100s? There was some documentation that marketplaces were happening back in the medieval times, that people would go to a market and they'd sell their wares. It is like that, where the marketplace was a consolidation of tradesmen or people that would come in and work in that marketplace and do those kinds of things together. So it was all one place that you could go shopping, instead of the consumer going to the individual vendors or suppliers to find that information. I found this kind of interesting. I just did this. This is more of a did you know kind of a thing, trivia kind of situation. Google has a deal where they looked at Google Books, where they have how often was marketplace used over time. And prior to about 1940, it wasn't being used in any of the books as a general rule. Doesn't mean marketplaces weren't in existence then, but it kind of popped up. And if you look at this, it really hit during the 70s and 80s, when the concept of a marketplace got used more in books. It got used more in literature and those kinds of things, and the use of the word grew. But then it's kind of stabilized after that. So if I look at, and this came from ShareTribe, what is a marketplace? And the kicker to it is the marketplace is in the middle. It's a forum, it's a platform, it's a place where customers and providers interact. If you look at this section up here, number 2, it's saying where offers a platform for them to be able to book things that they're using, and that the payment system would be going through that. So instead of the seller and the customer talking directly to each other, they're working through some sort of a third party. Now, that's great. We all knew that. We kind of understood that. But let's talk about the 3 types and make sure we're kind of on the same page. We've got shops. So shops would include Shopify, BigCommerce, those Remarkable starting to grow into doing some of that kind of a concept. But basically, this is where they're giving you a platform by which you can put your products on it, but you control the products and what the environment looks like. If we look at Adobe Commerce or Magento, which, oh, by the way, that's something that we've heavily gotten involved with, and we've gotten heavily involved with Shopify. If you look at the difference between those two, if you look at the Magento and the Adobe Commerce world, you can control all that. You can change the look and feel. You can change how the theme works. You can change the colors. Shopify is not nearly as malleable, if you will, to doing those kinds of things. Shopify is going to be more of what do you want it to look like within the realm of what Shopify gives you. And so does BigCommerce. They're more of a true off-the-shelf, kind of like WordPress is, of using that tool specifically for a given need. Whereas WordPress has themes, Magento has themes, and you really don't have some of those things in that. But the majority of this is where you're dealing with all the issues like taking credit cards and payments and looking at the listing of all the orders that have been placed and what is the past orders. Now, we've done this with a tool we have called Altitude that allows with our APIs / connector that we have exposed the ability for you to see real-time pricing and availability and those kinds of things within the Magento world, because you can actually then make calls to those directly from the Magento environment. But you can't make those calls from Shopify because Shopify doesn't expose that world that you can get real-time pricing and availability. You can get near real-time pricing, but it's not going to go in and look at those things unless you get really complex with that, and that kind of defeats the purpose of Shopify. So I wouldn't necessarily call these as a marketplace per se. The next two I will. And these are some of the e-commerce marketplaces out there that you may be familiar with. You know, you may be selling, and we've got a lot of customers that are selling on each of these 5 different types of marketplaces, but this is not the full gamut of what's out there. Obviously, one everybody's familiar with is Amazon, but eBay comes into play as well. We've got customers, and the funny part about Walmart is that Walmart in the Canadian world is a completely different architecture than the Walmart in the US world. So when you start talking about marketplaces, technically I should be saying walmart.ca versus walmart.com because they're 2 different types of marketplaces. You know, Home Depot, you know, if you want to start selling products, Home Depot's growing into that world. Then we start getting into the things like fulfillment, and we'll talk a little bit more about, is it fulfillment by Amazon or is it fulfillment by vendor or by supplier? Amazon gives you those options, and if you follow the concept of, if you've been in the Amazon world, which a lot of you guys have been in marketplaces, you find that's totally 2 different worlds that you're talking about. The part that a lot of people, when none of you guys signed up for or said that you're doing, is this concept of a private marketplace. And most people have heard of Ariba and Coupa in the world of the wholesale distribution world or supplier world. You may not have heard of SupplyForce, some have, and I guarantee you most of you haven't heard of DeepStream, but they're the newbie on the block, if you will. But what this is dealing with is a little bit more of a very proprietary. It's like a country club versus a public golf course kind of an approach. This is the country club. You have people that sign up and get involved. It's the word that you may have heard called punch out. When you get into punch out kinds of concepts, and we're going to talk in about 2 seconds here, we're going to talk about that. But when you get into punch out, people think of Ariba and they think of Coupa. I don't like the term. Punch out doesn't make sense to me, but that's what's happened. And here's a flow chart of how the punch out conceptually works. You know, a buyer, and this buyer logs into an e-procurement system. In this case, the e-procurement system would be Ariba or Coupa. They're going to log into that world, and then they get routed to your website. If you're on the Coupa world or the Ariba world, they go into that Coupa or Ariba front end, and then it pops into your website, and then they add items to the shopping cart, and then they're transferred over to Coupa, and then it creates a PO that's then routed. What ends up happening, we actually do a lot of work with Coupa environment and with the Ariba environment, but we do it on an EDI approach. And part of the reason we do an EDI approach is because if you look at the source on this, this came from a document from Ariba the introduction to the Ariba network, this follows almost exactly what EDI looks like. And oh, by the way, we did a webinar with the users group a couple 3 months ago on exactly some of those things. If you want to go into more detail, you can go on to the user group forum and look at the recording of this. But in the EDI world, other than the first part, which is really not a lot of EDI when you get in the catalog, but you've probably heard, if you've done EDI, of a purchase order, which is an 850. You've heard of an order acknowledgement, which is an 855. Change orders, I can't remember what the ANSI number is that, but you get into advanced ship notices like an 856 or an invoice, which is an 810. Those are all EDI documents that realistically the punch out world falls into that, and actually Ariba is kind of a marketplace if you talk about that. Now, most people don't talk about marketplaces in that arena. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more today. Most people talk about marketplaces kind of like what ECDB does. They're kind of like a statistics. They're a marketing, not a marketing, a market research kind of company. And they did some analysis of, and I found this interesting, in 2024, this is worldwide, of the revenue of shops, things like Shopify, BigCommerce, Magento, Adobe Commerce, or even your own custom website. Those kind of things fall under shops versus marketplaces. And they looked at the revenue share in 2024 globally, and 72% of the revenue came from marketplaces. It didn't come from people having their own websites. Now, if you read the fine print down here, and we're going to get into it, this bolded portion down here is kind of the key, is because certain regions are driving this trend in the world, and that's China. Well, let's go look at that real quick. If you look at Asia, and in Asia, 97% of the revenue from e-commerce is driven through a marketplace. South America, 96%. North America and Europe and ROWs, rest of the world, they are not nearly as acclimated, or the buyers aren't nearly as desirable, using the desire to use the marketplaces. They're not using as much of the Amazons of the world, or for example, let's say Grainger, which quite honestly, Grainger becomes a marketplace as well, or some of the other ones that are popping up. They're not using it. The consumers, the businesses, the business consumers, even B2B, aren't using the marketplace nearly as much in North America and Europe as they are in Asia and South America, and more importantly is Asia and China. That's what's driving the volume for that percentage, is because of those parts. But this I found kind of interesting, is growth. Global growth rates have been consistently greater in the marketplace arena than they have been with the online store. So what you're seeing here is that is the opportunity. That is kind of where people, at least from the buyer's perspective, they're really starting to grow into that arena. Well, which ones are they looking at? Well, the ones that they're looking at here, you can see the growth, have been guys like Amazon, Walmart, eBay, so forth. Temu, I'm not familiar with them, but I did a little research on them. They're one of the ones that are one of the Chinese ones in the United States. If you notice, let's look at this. This is the United States marketplace rankings. You're seeing some of the Chinese marketplaces and or Asian marketplaces are starting to grow into the United States, and marketplaces are starting to take hold from that perspective. And the thing that amazed me the most was this slide. If you look at the top, and this came from Digital Commerce 360, and by the way, they do really kind of focus on the supplier, distributor, manufacturer types of distribution or commerce kinds of things. They don't do as much of the retail as the other slides that I was talking about. It's more of a retail of taint to it. But if you look at this, worldwide, Amazon's not the 500-pound gorilla that we all think of when we think of marketplaces. Amazon's not the one that's the strong one worldwide. They are in the United States, but they aren't necessarily worldwide. I don't even know the other five. I look at them, but most of them, and Alibaba's the other one that's the big one out there in the world. You don't see, any of, like, you don't see Walmart on this chart. You don't see, say Target or Home Depot or any of the other places that you could potentially be marketing through in a marketplace. You don't see that. Well, all right, we've gotten through all of the things of what's a marketplace. And again, I didn't mean to insult you, and I didn't mean to be condescending, but I found it very interesting that the marketplaces, if you truly define it the way we do and way some of the industry pundits have done it, you're starting to see that the marketplaces are really growing more than just going and doing your own website. Well, if I look at it, we've been doing EDI for a long time. And like I said, if we look at the concepts that we've done with the approaches of the private ones that have been out there, the Aribas, the Coupas, if you look at that EDI, and these are the EDI documents for static information. Static information is product information, or theoretically customers, or some of the availability and pricing and that kind of stuff. For you to be on a marketplace, you've got to put that static information in place. Now, if you try to do that with EDI, that ends up being these documents. So the ANSI X12 832 is the price sales catalog. The 852 is the product. And I don't need to bore you with that stuff, but you could try to do it with an EDI solution, but it gets to be difficult. On the same sense, transactional information, we all do know, and Ariba is doing those. The 850 is the purchase order, the 855 is the acknowledgement, the 856 is the ASN, and so forth. Those have been around for decades. So EDI fits extremely well from a transactional perspective, even with the marketplaces. You may think of EDI as only trying to do it with guys like 3M or dealing with manufacturers or whatever, but you can also have this work with the marketplaces. We actually have customers doing an 850 in with Amazon, or they're doing it with eBay. So it's very possible to be looking at that, and that's where the transactional aspects come into play. So let's go down. What does Grey Wolf offer? I showed you real quick. We've got a PIM. So what is a PIM? It's a product information management system. What that really means is, and part of the reason I showed this, that's actually coming from our website, this nice little picture of it. It's the process of centralizing, organizing, enriching, and distributing information about products. And each of those words were selected explicitly. You're trying to centralize the information about products. That means you're trying to get a single source of truth. You're trying to organize it. You're trying to make sure that you don't have products that maybe cross over, or how do they fit. Look at it through your customer's eyes and figure out what product lines you may be carrying and maybe what kinds of attributes that they have and categories they're associated with. Enriching it, not just the standard P21 data that's available, but enrich it with product information like images and like working with data sheets and enriching it with all kinds of attributes and how you can search and find products if you're doing it through an e-commerce solution. And then distributing the information. This is not distributing the product. This is distributing the information that now this PIM becomes a single source of truth. It becomes the cornerstone to all your product information being sent out, and then the support for synchronizing with vendors, customers, ERP, e-commerce, and marketplaces, so that you're actually then using it as the hub, and the spokes are all these different places that you disseminate this information to. So we have a product called Keystone, and it's a product management tool. And this is where I'm going to go into a demo of what Keystone looks like. So bear with me, pop over to a screen here. Nope, not that one. I had it someplace. I gotta bear with me here. That's not that one. Okay, we'll just open up another tab. We'll just do it this way. All right. So I'm going to go into demo. We have lots of things that we've included into our PIM. What does that mean? Well, what we've included into this is we have products, and you're seeing one product here, and we'll go into more detail, and you can put folders associated with it, and you can then organize your products accordingly. You can have the concept of a product with variants in here. So if I've got colors or different pieces or different sizes or different variants of that product, I can I can have variance associated with it and keep that hierarchy when I look at this and see how the variance would play out. In this case, I don't have any variance. I can have a concept called collections. What is a collection? A collection is a grouping of products of which you're going to apply things to those groups of products and be able to maintain those products as a grouping. Categories. This is the categories that you may be wanting to be working with in your e-commerce solution. You may want to use these for your categories for your Shopify or your Magento environment. It may not be the categories for Amazon and Shopify, and we'll get into why that would be the case. One of the things that you've got to figure out is where do I get my source of information so I can import things from a spreadsheet. And it's as simple as saying, okay, I'm going to do a spreadsheet product import, and I can do the mapping of it, figure out which mapping I want to work off of, and do an import, and I can bring in all the things from a spreadsheet and put it into the central repository. We're not going to get into customers, but that was what we set up for some of our Shopify customers, that they wanted to start having customer pricing, and we had to have customers associated with it. And one of the things that Keystone allows us to do is once we've got all this product information, these are all the different types of integrations that we've done so that I can push products and or companies push and get from Shopify or from Amazon. I can push and get. I can go to P21. I can push and get products from there, so that I can have all this information. Well, what's that information look like? Well, I'm looking at this product and I've got the ability to go look at the basic information. One of the things that we work off is that a SKU is a SKU. Well, now that I have this product defined by a SKU, I may have a name associated with it. I may have UPC. Is it taxable or not? I can get into descriptions. I can have a base description or an extended description. Remember, I was telling you about how more than P21, I don't have the ability to go in and start putting in information, and then I want to have it where part of this information ends up being bold or italicized, or I want to make it into a number. I can put this, gets into that more of the HTML kind of information that I've got as an extended description for this product, and then I can share that with my e-commerce solution or with my marketplace or whatever, and use the appropriate types of formatting that goes with it. I can have a whole bunch of attributes associated with it, things like color or size or dimension. Now we've put size, dimension under these physical aspects because every product has these basic elements, but the attributes here end up being things that you may want to control. And again, this is an example like amperage, weight rating, bolt length, color, decal. By the way, a lot of these, I'm going to show you how this ends up populating into a Magento website. But if I've got this information and I put all the things like maybe related products, what collections do they fall into, I got to do at least this obligatory concept of AI. We do have AI associated with it, that basically we're going to say, okay, for SEO, I've got meta information for keywords and descriptions and those kinds of things. Well, we've set it up that we have this update for product SEO, and it uses an LLM, if you've heard of that term. It uses the llama from Meta. It uses that AI engine, and it walks through the descriptions. If you fill out the description and put a whole bunch of words into it, it's going to auto-populate the SEO information for that product without you having to manually think about what it's doing. It will put in the keywords, the 10 keywords that you want into the metadata associated with it. And then when you push this information to a marketplace, it's the same keyword information that's going to the Amazon, same keyword that's going to eBay, same keyword that may be going to your own personal website. So a lot of this information then becomes consistent. And again, I had to do the AI word. Now, one of the things we have is to enhance these products. I can, now this image type, this gets into the Magento, I can specify what the image types are so that when I push this to say Magento, it has that kind of information associated with it, so it populates Magento correctly. Or do I have an Amazon image type? It's an offer image or an image URL. And one of the things we've done with this PIM and you may have heard the term called CDN, or Content Digital Network. You can have we do everything based off of URL for those images tied to this product. Now, if I go look at this image over here, I look at that, I have within here kind of a mini Photoshop. So not only do I have this image, I can edit it, and I can add information, I can put text into it, I can do all kinds of coloring, I can shade it, like I said, a mini Photoshop, if you will, save and publish it. And then when I save and publish it, this URL link that you see here, if I pop out to it, this URL is actually the linkage from the outside pointing to that CDN, that image from Keystone directly. Now, it doesn't have to be from Keystone. I'm going to pop over to another customer. This is actually a P21 customer. They've got a URL where their URL is actually coming from Eaton. So you can see in here, it's coming from Eaton maintaining this image. If that image changes at Eaton, then it automatically changes within the PIM. And if it changes then from within the PIM, it's actually then going to be published accordingly to the actual places like Amazon or eBay or your website, and it will be updated automatically from that. So you have some flexibility here on how you can control the data that's going to these marketplaces. And it's all available within this one location. So a product manager can actually control not only just the images, but let's say data sheets. And again, it's going off of our server, doesn't have to, but it's going off of our server that I have the data sheet here. I drag and dropped it into it. And if I go look at what that data sheet looks like, here's what it looks like. Now, again, real world, how do we use that, say, with an e-commerce or a marketplace? This customer over here is KBS, and their website is, they branded a separate part of their company called MV Components. And we're using this actual PIM. If you look at these products, I could go and find this product, go look at the fusing, I could go find the fuse, and then as I drill into the product, one of the things I have is this brochure. Well, that brochure happens to be one of the brochures that we've got into the data images, which comes from the data sheets here, which is coming from Eaton. I then click on this, I can then download, and if you'll notice then, here's the Eaton content, and this is all being maintained from Keystone, but it's being published to their e-commerce site. If they had been using something like Amazon for some of this stuff and wanted to sell on Amazon, it'd be the same thing. If they were trying to sell it through Ariba, it'd be the same thing. We could push to Ariba, and it's now consistent all from one place, one data source, which is the PIM. Okay, now we've got the content. We've got all that stuff pushed to whichever environment you're saying. Let's say it's Amazon. Actually, I gotta digress a little bit. One of the things about Amazon I want to talk about is that Amazon, if you do start working with Amazon, one of the things I put in there is tips and tricks for the marketplaces. Amazon is extremely painful to work with. Why? Because you have to work within their specific attributes and product characteristics associated with it. So what we've done is we've written our tool to go to Amazon and use their APIs so that you don't have to think through what's being done. So when I have this product, the first thing I do is I go to the screen here and I say, okay, which product type? And oh, by the way, this list of product types and the case sensitivity, the fact that it has underscores and everything else, these are actually coming from, these words are coming from Amazon's website. So if they change their setup, this would show automatically what those changes are. So I can pick, and as you scroll down through this even further, you can see these are all the different types of product types that Amazon has. Once I pick that, our APIs, we call their APIs, go out, take a look at it. So we've done a couple here. I'm going to go pull the abrasives, and when I pull that up, all of this information, we try to make this easy for you to try to figure out what fields you need to populate so that when you push to Amazon, all the information is being pushed appropriately. For example, pretty easy. This is yes or no. That again, this we don't populate. This is dynamic. But say a fulfillment code, Amazon North America or default. You can specify things like inventory always available, yes or no. What's the minimized advertised prices? You can update some of all these things. These are the fields all associated with specifically abrasives. We're not going to have an image option because we're going to use the images coming from this digital assets. But say shipping, for example, I have the units of measure. These are the specific, you can't have different units of measure than what you see here from Amazon. That's one of the things that they are going to force. They have a set, regimented set of attributes, units of measure, all the different characteristics. And what we've tried to do is say, okay, if that's the case, you can maintain this information now from within Keystone and understand what Amazon's asking for, whether it be variations, safety and compliance, product identity. You know, you've got a whole bunch of other elements that you can control, and the stars here are the ones that are required elements associated with the Amazon push. Okay, that's the piece I wanted to talk about for Amazon. Shopify is a lot simpler. All we have is just some basic things for Shopify, and then you have the ability to control a lot more with the Shopify world than you do the Amazon, only because Amazon is the 500-pound gorilla, and they say this is the Bible that you have to adhere to. Now that you have all this product information put into there, now we're going to flip over to Partner Connect. So if we go back over here to our homepage, there's two sides to this equation. One's the PIM side and one's the EDI side. The EDI side, and I'm not going to go back over to my PowerPoint, it's the same thing. It's the computer-computer exchange of documents in electronic format. Basically, it's the transactions. And we can support any type, including things like working with the Amazon APIs. We don't actually use a flat file approach to this. It's using the Amazon APIs that we go out, we query Amazon and say, okay, when's the last time an order's been placed? All right, let's bring that down. Let's put it into P21. Now that I got the order in there, I can go ahead and send an invoice through back to Amazon and say, here's the invoice that's associated with it. And we can do all the different pieces and parts that are associated with it. It's really hard to show this, but what I can show you is the idea that this should be lights out. That's the purpose of this, is to have no transactions fail. In reality, they'd fail. So how do I deal with the exceptions? Here's how I do it. First of all, you've got a portal that you can work with us on, and you can get notifications. Oh, by the way, the notifications would look something like, let's see if I have one. No, I don't have one handy real quick. I got rid of it. I don't know why it went away. But if the notifications come in through an email saying, hey, this has been transacted and we've got a problem, it didn't work or it did work, or here's a problem because the product doesn't exist in P21, you can go in now into my account. I can go look into this and say, okay, show me a document tracker. And while I'm working in the document tracker, I can actually have, let's go look at, say, KBS we were looking at, or actually I've got a demo here, and I've got an order, and I can see, oh, lovely. Don't you love it when a demo fails? All right, let's go to Plan B. I'm going to go pull up a video. And in this video, and I was going to show this anyway, it's the same concept, but this is using it for Ariba. So if it's a marketplace of using Ariba, we have an 850 that's coming in and it's been mapped, and we bring it in and you can see where it's happening. Then we get into the purchase order acknowledgement. It's bringing that coming from P21 and we send it out to Ariba and it's been acknowledged, and we tell you those things. If it isn't, it's going to fail, and we're going to see where the failures are and deal with the failures and allow you to resubmit documents as we're going through it. So you can see we can go all the way from a purchase order through an acknowledgement to an advanced ship notice to an actual invoice, and we have all those things available to us from that perspective within my account. Now, I also have the ability to do resubmittals. So let's go look at KBS, and let's go do a purchase order and search. And I happen to have this purchase order. Well, cool. Let's go look at the line items on it. I can see the header. I can see the line items. If I want to edit any of these, I can edit it, change the product number, make some changes accordingly, and I can do this all from here so that it flows through the system to and from P21 to the marketplace, whether it be Amazon, eBay, Ariba, Coupa, or maybe even your own website. You may want to have that. I mean, your website would be better to go straight directly through APIs, but you could do it the same concept with all of those things. So going full circle, and oh, by the way, I glossed over a little bit on this EDI stuff, mostly because that's already in that previous webinar that I did a couple, 3 months ago. So if you want more details on the EDI side, you can find that on that other webinar. Pricing, very affordable. What we do for our PIM is we charge $180 a month. We charge $60 for your integration for P21 per month. That's this piece right here. And then whichever piece you're pushing to or pulling from, it's $30 a month. So if you're going to Amazon or you're going to Shopify, you're going to your own you may be doing all three, which quite honestly, you probably should be doing all three. Then we have that on a charge per month basis. And oh, by the way, this is on our website. This is a screenshot from our website. All of our pricing is there, including our contracts. If you click on place order, it will show you what the contracts look like. From an EDI perspective, it's a pure subscription basis. So if you're just doing a handful of orders with Amazon, you can actually have that as a trading partner connection. So you have 4 with Amazon, maybe, or 2. Let's say you're doing the 850 and the 810, which is the purchase order and the invoice. That would be 2 trading partner connections. It costs you $440 a month, and it includes everything: setups, mapping, everything included. You don't have anything that you're going to be dealing with unless it's something very specific and unique to you, which if you're dealing with marketplaces, you're already struggling with the Amazon environment in the first place. So very affordable to be able to get the transaction side done as well as the static side. So in summary, first of all, marketplaces are starting to dominate the online shops. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have your own shop. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be using Shopify or BigCommerce or anything else. They just become multiple touch points for you to do that. But what I'm trying to say to you is, don't forget the marketplaces. They are starting to take over, at least internationally, they're starting to take over the e-commerce world. There are multiple flavors of marketplaces. You've got the private ones, you've got the public ones like the Amazon, but you've also got the things like Ariba and Coupa. Don't forget those things. If you've got a buying group, sometimes the buying groups have their own marketplace. That comes into play. But the kicker to it is, if they have all these different flavors, you do want to make sure that you have the architecture in place so that it integrates with P21 for the transactions, and that you're populating that data correctly with a consistent and a catalog that has a single source of truth from a product management tool. The static and transactional information needs to be handled differently because they are different. If people tell you that they can do product information with EDI, we've been doing EDI for a long, long time. We're trying to get people to understand that paradigm is very difficult, that transactional information is different than static information, and you need to deal with them differently. And the entry to get into doing different marketplaces can be a very low risk. You can get involved with us, have one PIM tool, one set of EDI transactions that are doing, get started on it. If it doesn't work, cancel. It's a low risk kind of environment, but at least you can start getting involved in not only your own personal e-commerce solution, not dealing the EDI that you've been doing, say with 3M or any of the other major manufacturers like DAP, or name a manufacturer or customers if you got some of your customers, but you can also get involved with your marketplaces and start getting involved low key. Cheryl said it, we're going to be at the conference. We're looking forward to it. If you have questions, hopefully this triggered some thought processes. Jackson and I will be in Dallas, and we'll be looking forward to answering your questions. We'll be at the booth and hopefully stop by and just at least say hi to us. Cheryl, I gave you a few minutes for questions, if we have some, but I at least didn't go as short as I have in the past, so I'll open it up to questions at this point.
You know, it's so funny because you say that you talk fast, but you don't really talk fast. You just cover a lot in a short period of time. So I'm glad you talk faster. We would be here for 3 hours because there's so much to cover.
I've been told the terminology that people have says it's like getting a drink from a fire hose. So I understand.
For sure. No. I seriously have coffee when I'm on webinars with you, and I don't drink coffee in the afternoon, but I have to when I'm with you. So I have a question here to start off with. Do you have an API so that we can do the sync of data with our custom website from the PIM? And if so, how would that be costed?
So we do have it. So we have APIs. So let me pop over real quick here, and it's on our website. If you go to our website and go look at our connectors, and then specifically, this is where the question comes in: are you on-prem or are you in the cloud? Let's talk about the on-prem. We have all of these APIs available to us. Now, in theory, you aren't using, any kind of DynaChain stuff. This is all written for standard. But for example, if I go look at items, warehouse products select, this gives me the information that's available via our APIs. So you can go look at that yourself. How does that work if we're going with our solution? The pricing is here, and it ended up being $500 a year is what you'd have for that integration, so that you could get the integration with P21 to update for read and write access to that P21 on-prem. And again, the same thing for the P21 cloud, same kind of concept. If you ever had a desire to use our APIs with another, say you have an HR application or some sort of shipping application, that's the only difference between the light and the full version. Is the light version is with our products, the full version is used with third party or your own custom applications. So hopefully that answered their question.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay.
How quickly could you get us set up and running with PIM and or EDI? I know we talked about EDI in the last webinar, but we touched on it a bit today.
Right, so let me do that one just real quick on the EDI. That's going to be driven by your trading partners. And in this case, we're talking about specifically getting up and running on Amazon. We could get you fairly up and running fairly quickly because it's a known commodity. When you get into trading partners that are an unknown commodity, say a customer, it gets to be more of it depends. Depends on how knowledgeable they are, our specifications been set, those kinds of things. But if you're dealing with marketplaces like eBay and Amazon, that's a lot quicker. It's going to be more dependent upon you of what you know you need and how you want to process the exceptions. If you're fairly comfortable with that and confident with that, we can usually get you up and running within a couple months, and probably even if they're really, really good, we can get you up and running less than a month. On the PIM side, that's actually a lot quicker, mostly because that is static information, and it's not like we're dealing with exceptions per se. So we can, if you've already got a website up and running, if you're on Amazon or something else, that might take a little longer because it is complex with Amazon. But let's say you want to push it to your Magento website, we could probably get your Magento store up and running, probably within a couple weeks, assuming you've got the product information for the PIM content readily available. That's usually the hard part, as everybody knows, is where do I get the content from? What else?
What else? Next question. Does the Keystone application have an API? And again, how is that costed or priced?
So does it have an API? If you're saying, can somebody read the Keystone data from their environment? So we're not pushing and pulling from Keystone, we're letting someone have access to the data. The answer is yes, and it's currently included in the pricing. The question isn't as much can we do it, the question is do you want to or should you do it? Should you be opening up your PIM to people having access to it? It's a brand new proof of concept that we have. One of the things that we've done is we have integrated, if you go to Keystone, go to integrate with third-party software, you're going to see this video, and let me just open this up while I'm talking. One of the things you're going to see that we can do is say within design is that I can have these APIs available so that InDesign can actually put together a catalog, a print catalog, for example. As you can see here, it's got a data source up here in this corner right here. You see where it says the data source is demo. That's actually reading directly against the Keystone data. And I can actually then use, say, in this case, InDesign, or I could use Excel, or I could use other tools that allow me to populate a print catalog. And again, you can look at this video yourself. It's on our website. Let me just kind of pop ahead. Let me get to here. When I start to include, say, images on that, it puts those images. And then when I click on go, if you will, it will actually then put and mail merge, if you will, and that's the best terminology I can think of, where it starts to merge all the information together and show it all in a print catalog, or you could put it into an Excel spreadsheet or something along those lines. What's next?
Okay, we have one last question here that I think we have time for.
Okay.
And that is, and I think I already know the answer to this. Do you have a list of P21 customers using Keystone or Partner Connect? And I think you do on your website, don't you?
No, we don't.
Oh,
We keep the,
good.
no, we have, what we do is that's on the, you're thinking the EDI side, and yes, we have all the
Oh,
trading partners that we have.
sorry,
That's this
that's what I
past
thought.
documents. The reason we don't put our customers' names out there is because I'm not sure they want us to, they wouldn't want us to publish it. It's kind of like putting your kid on a social media kind of thing. But do we have P21 customers that I can get you in contact with? Absolutely. We have references, no question. I mean, I obviously gave you one. I mean, if you really want to know, there's one. There's KBS. That's definitely a P21 customer that's using it right now.
Well, I don't have any more questions right now. Any final thoughts other than how much you're excited to see everyone at Connect?
No, I'm really looking forward to that. I really am. I love it.
I know.
Those people that know me that are on this call, they'll know that it's an opportunity for me to just to get excited about what we do. I get so emotional about stuff, and it's really fun to do it face to face and over a beer or glass of wine or whatever. And it's fun just seeing people face to face and talk about this stuff.
Well, I want to thank you so much for today and for getting us ready, headed into Connect with just a few short weeks left. I'm looking forward to seeing you and catching up, and not just be about work. Maybe we can have a beer after work one day. For those of you still on the call, this session was recorded and will be posted on the user group forum. It sometimes takes us a day to get it there, but we will get it there as soon as possible. Rick, thank you again.
Thanks, Cheryl. I appreciate it. I'm going to just do this real quick so it's in the recording.
Yes.
If you need to get hold of me, let me know.